Well, 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 well. Raised Voices is back. Is this episode
Yes, we are.
8?
Ooh, is that
Wow.
consistency?
Is that accountability? Are we just moving along with these conversations?
I mean, look at us go.
I mean, what is this thing of to say your word and mean it? Is that what we're showing?
Are we
Hmm.
showing we can trust ourselves?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Listen, future risers, we are back. We are here for another conversation. I don't think you're ready for this one, so have your seatbelt on in the car. You know, I tell you,
Mm,
you got to go to work, you got to do your hustle. We want you to be safe. Listen, we have new subscribers to YouTube. We thank you.
yes.
I mean, come on in the casa, get comfortable. We love all the new listeners. We love
Hmm.
the subscribers, and we love those of you who have been rocking with us from the beginning. So we just say thank you, thank you. We see you, even though some of you guys have private accounts.
Mm, phantom accounts, but we
It's
see.
okay. They're doing the work before they show up. Okay, that's what we
Yep,
asked you to do.
that's it.
So we love that. But listen, we have a very esteemed conversation and guests here in the building with us. We have the community voices heard that are going to be talking with us about what I'm calling the epidemic of the rental crisis we have here in New York. But
Mm,
let me tell you, what's in New York is also going nationwide. Oh, yeah, of course. It's not just
hmm.
us, but our people that's fighting on the front lines, they're here with us. So I'm going to need you guys to take notes. I'm going to need you to comment. I'm going to need you to share because it's impacting all of us, whether we realize it or not. The things that they're going to educate us on, the mission and the passion that they have is going to help all of us. And just remember, our children need safe places to live.
Mm,
Our children are impacted when they don't have a place that they can rest and call home because they're worried we may have to move. We may have to
100%.
be outside. We may have to go be with other family members. I thought we said the children were the future. Is that what we said as a nation, as a state? We
Mm,
got to prove that. We got to prove that. People need a place to live. If an adult gets put out and an adult has a child, whether that child is biological or not, what do you think the pressures are that the child, the family, the male, the female that is running the house, what do you think they are going under? Stop robbing our children of stability. I said it. Y'all know I tell you I'm double mature out here. I said it. It came to disrupt
yes.
the negativity and to say the thing you don't want to say. Here for a little bit. You can handle it. Just stop robbing our children. Stop robbing our women and our men who are out here trying to hold it down on the legal side. Okay. Oh, you
Yeah.
mad at me? Oh boy, Miss
Hmm.
Sounds. I already started with they're mad because I said to stop.
Yeah. You said legal and they just turned off the podcast.
I'm so sorry. Listen, Miss Sounds gonna make y'all happy. She's just gonna stop me now and she's gonna go into the word of the day and y'all gonna be happy with this again. All right,
Yes.
I'm off my soapbox.
Yes, Lady Lee, let's save the energy for the conversation because we got a lot to get through. But welcome everyone for listening to Raise Voices. I just want to welcome our wonderful guests, Cherie and Eli from Community Voices Heard. Thank you for joining us this afternoon as we get into the meat of some really important conversation. Before we dive in, though, what we like to do is something called Word of the Day. And so, what that is we read out a quote that really is deep and impactful, and we see how it resonates with us in our own life. So, we kind of reflect outwardly and then just share with each other how that makes us feel and how that shows up in our life. So I'm going to read the quote of the day now, and then I'll start so that you guys have a framework for how this goes, and then we'll just go around um, reflecting. So the word of the day for today is love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place. Let's breathe that in for a
Yeah, we
second.
just that's that's a big one.
That's a big one. How this resonates for me when I think about this quote is that I think everyone has a fear of being judged. And so hiding is a natural inclination um, for fear of being judged by the outside world. And so this idea of love in this quote shows me that we need to be providing more safety, acceptance
Yes.
for people to feel safe enough and comfortable enough to be their authentic self, unashamed, unapologetically. And so when we can fill the world with more opportunities to accept and, celebrate and uplift and empower, people come out from hiding and feel safe and free enough to be who they are. That's what I get from it.
I just want to steal her answer. I want to steal it. It's so good. I guess I'll go next and then Miss Cherie and then Eli can jump in after.
Sure.
Wow. For me, it's all about dreaming. When you have love in your heart, whether the love was given to you or you had to create it internally, it makes you want to do everything you're dreaming of. I didn't
Mm,
necessarily say do it well, but what it does is it creates a catalyst within you to want to see what you can become, what you can do. And that for me equals influence. You're only influential when you have some level of love within you that refuses to stay inside. You can't hold it
mm,
down. You can't
yeah,
keep it from coming out. It moves you. And your
absolutely.
job is to make sure that what it moves you to do is something that's positive for the human race, including yourself. So
Mm,
I'm not talking about self-sacrifice. I'm including you in the human race. So
yeah.
that's what it is for me is finding that influence because I love being alive. I love people. I love possibilities. And therefore, I can't stay hidden all of my life.
Mm,
Miss
I love that.
Cherie.
I would say love, the love component, I would equate it with humanity and treating people how you want to be treated with
Mhm.
no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What about you, Eli?
Wow. Well, y'all set the bar incredibly high, so I don't know how I'm going to follow any of that. Um, so I endorse everything that's been said already. And I think what that quote has me thinking about is yeah, there's that piece about we need safety and recognition and acceptance to like have our soul crawl out of its cave, right? And also, um, sometimes love needs to push us a little bit, and we need to let ourselves be pushed. So
Mm,
I'm actually, uh, it actually makes me think of a quote from Dr. King that I just heard the other day, and he says that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. So I think for me, when I think about love, I'm thinking of like, sure, the personal and the deep heart, but also the social and the world
yeah.
and the way that love needs to be enacted in the world, such that all the walls that keep people apart, keep people from feeling accepted, keep people being harmed,
Hmm.
fall down.
Absolutely.
Did he? He said he couldn't follow that. That okay.
I know, right?
Eli, you done said a whole bunch of things
Right.
that I
Well,
what?
let's be fair.
You
Most of
couldn't
it was
set the
Dr.
bar.
King. You know, most of
Oh,
it was
but
Dr.
That's
King.
true.
yes, but
What?
your recital of that was was awesome. That was a podcast by itself. Oh my goodness. That was awesome. My goodness. I am going to stay seated.
Yeah.
Because
We get a little excited on this podcast when
we
we
do.
hear some really deep things. So yes.
All right, Miss Sounds, take it away for us in let's get to know those that we have here visiting with us.
Yes, yes. Well, Eli and Cherie, again, we are honored to have you here to hear what you have to say, to hear the work that you are doing out there in the community, not just talking about it, but being about it. And so we just want to hear a little bit about each of you. Um, First, can you just tell us a little bit about you, yourselves, your journeys to get here?
You go first, Cherie.
Okay. Um, I'm from the Hudson Valley area, primarily Beacon, where I was born and raised, and I've seen a lot of changes, and those changes is what sort of led me to Community Voices Heard, otherwise known as CVH.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been so I'm my role at CVH. I'm a senior organizer for the Hudson Valley. I've been living in the Hudson Valley for going on 8 years. I'm originally from farther up north, and I think similar to what Cherie shared, and what I know many of our members like Cherie have experienced. I've seen whether it was on the West Coast where I used to live, down south where I used to live, or right here in the Hudson Valley, the communities that I love and the people that I love in them um, continuing to get pushed out, rolled over by, um, yeah, by forces that are looking just to generate a profit and not thinking about who's actually living in our communities and deserves to stay. And I believe that everyone deserves to stay. And we
Mm,
need all of us in our communities to have really thriving whole communities. So that led me to Community Voices Heard, which has
yeah.
been, fighting to ensure both like housing justice and racial and social and economic justice
Yeah.
for decades, as I'm sure we'll talk more about. So I was inspired to continue my organizing work with a powerful organization that's led by people like Miss Cherie.
Mm, powerful. Um, So interesting that you talk about the injustices that exist in the community towards people that are seeking shelter and safety. Can you just kind of go into some of the issues you have seen in the New York area regarding rental and housing crisis? Anyone can pop in.
We've seen a lot of evictions, a lot of people having to relocate from the area. Just the cost of living has just skyrocketed. And, it's not just in New York, it's all over.
Mm,
And it's just changing neighborhoods, no longer having that security of your neighbors who've been your neighbors, a sense of community where everyone looks out for each other, walking
mm,
down the street, running into your neighbors. There's no more of that. And I mean, I welcome people that want to, move to my neighborhood, but it doesn't have to be at the cost
Mm-hmm.
of pushing others out.
mm.
And so you said born and raised here. So how long, over what length of time have you seen this drastic change, or and did you see it coming before it actually hit?
The cost of living was going up slightly over the years, but the pandemic is what really caused it to skyrocket out of control.
Mm,
People were migrating to my area just to leave the city and other surroundings to where they would pay any price
Mm,
to live in my neighborhood.
mm,
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like these forces were already underway in Beacon, in Poughkeepsie, and also where I live. I'd say over the last like definitely 10 years,
mhm,
it's really been like steadily ramping up where, um, and it's, and it honestly, it's even longer than that if you want to like get deep into it, right? Like something that, Cherie and I have talked about and other people in Beacon and Poughkeepsie have talked about is like Beacon and Poughkeepsie were cities where back in the 60s and 70s and 80s with like, and then even later with IBM closing in the 90s, right? Like a lot of money got pulled out of them
Mm-hmm.
and things kind of started to like fall apart because government, industry, people with the power and the resources to keep cities afloat weren't putting money into them the way that they should have been. And then the economy starts to change after the housing crisis, and people with some pocket change, like landlords and developers, start seeing this opportunity in places like Beacon and Poughkeepsie and Hudson, where I live, right? Buying up properties, converting, multifamily homes into single family homes and flipping them for twice what they were worth, three times. And then that's already going on. The pandemic hits and it was like someone poured gasoline on the fire,
Wow.
So just one example, like in Poughkeepsie, I know rents went up at least 16% over the course of like 1 year, the first year of the pandemic, in the town where I live, a little further up the river, Hudson, and that area, the whole county actually, home prices jumped by 75% in that
Wow.
same first year. So we're talking like doubling, tripling, quadrupling. And as we know, these are cities where folks are like living paycheck to paycheck a lot. So who are we catering to with those kind of prices is the question I hear Miss Cherie and others ask a lot.
Now,
Yeah.
were there any physical signs? Because, our podcast is geared towards the general population, meaning the everyday person, right? And so I'm wondering, as this influence moves into other neighborhoods, are there signs for them to know this could possibly be happening where I am?
Mm.
That's a great question. Cherie, I'm curious what your experience from watching Beacon change, like how you answer that question.
I mean, there were signs, but at a certain point, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't just one particular area of a particular town. It just spread
Mm-hmm.
across the board. Now people are paying more than 50% of their income just to whether it's their rent, mortgage, whatever. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
The average should be like 30%. When you're having to pay 50% and you may have to work two jobs, and that's still not enough. You have the elderly, retired people, you have people who are disabled. That's just not sustainable. For me, I'm a disabled person. I became disabled at a young age. So it's very difficult to navigate through this, and I just, want to be able to stay where I was born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
the way it's going, I don't know where I'm going to end up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can, 'cause that's a very, very interesting point about the unknown, fear of the unknown, what's going to happen to me tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through the mind of someone in this position, someone that um, a person that we might know, or somebody or people you've worked with in the cause that fears the lack of stability that is to come and lack of consistency from day to day, and deals with probably a cycle of emotions, different emotions coming in and out. Can you kind of describe or help our audience to really feel that person? Who is that person? What does that
I've
person look like?
known people, it's caused anxiety, it's caused PTSD for some.
Mm,
It's, just me personally, everyone that I've had that I was friends with since I was 5 years old has left Beacon.
mm,
Most of them have left the state. So for me, that's all of my friends.
Mm,
They all have left Beacon because it's just too expensive. And before, you used to could possibly move to Poughkeepsie, maybe move to Newburgh. Now that's not the case, Fishkill, Wappingers, that's not the case. It's you have to go move very far away.
mm,
If you're lucky enough where you have a job, you can transfer or have other family members. So it's very scary,
mm,
people that have children having to, in the middle of a school year, switch schools. I know someone that she had to move out of Beacon and move to the worst possible neighborhood you can think of because that's
wow,
all she could afford.
wow,
And became, she was afraid to leave her home.
mm, wow.
Yeah, and I can share that, in my experience of talking to others across Beacon, Poughkeepsie, and Hudson Valley, like it's that sense of, if you can imagine, just a constant sense of instability.
Mm,
Like we're accustomed, hopefully we're accustomed to feeling like even if my day is really going down the tubes, I know that when I get home, it's a place
mm,
that I feel safe and comfortable and relaxed, right? But living with when you're living with rent that's so high that you have to work two jobs and are still paying 50% of your income, or when you're
mm,
living in buildings that aren't being taken care of the way that landlords and owners should, and there's, mice coming through the walls, there's water coming through the ceiling, that place doesn't feel like a place that there's no safe place to return to, right? And then
mm.
you're worried you might lose that, even just the roof over your head. Even if it doesn't feel safe, it's better than being out on the street, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I was just talking to another person in Beacon on Monday, and he's works full time and overtime at his sales job. He's got like a good job, he's working his butt off at it. And he was like, I've got a money order sitting in my car that like I haven't been able to send to my family member who needs it, because I'm like, what if I need that to buy groceries tomorrow? And like I
Mm,
have to go home and decide, like, am I going to fill the fridge, or am I going to pay Central Hudson? Am I going to
mm,
like take my kid to this medical appointment that they need, or am I going to like put that money towards the rent increase that the landlord's asking for? Those are some of the like
mm.
really hard choices that people are being forced to make by this economy.
Absolutely. Oh my
Yeah, so
goodness.
that's a big one for me in what I'm hearing you say, because you said this person has a good job.
Mhm.
So that says to me that the systemic problem is not for someone who is, let's say, uneducated, because we tend in society to think someone is uneducated, unable to find that employment, and therefore unable to pay their bills. But that's not what I hear you saying. You're saying able to do, having the good job, have the education, is responsible, is a good resident of their community,
Mhm.
still struggling severely. I just want to
Yeah.
capture that well, make sure I'm hearing so that the audience.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that for your audience to think about too, like that is true and awful. And there's a reason that we often hear that like someone must be uneducated or unwilling to work or not good at balancing a checkbook if they're falling behind on rent or at risk of losing their housing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that none of those things can be true about people, but the truth is that the system as it's constructed right now is really designed for the people that are able to own properties to be able to make as much profit off of them. And that's what they see them as profit generating machines. And when that's the viewpoint, like you just said, Lady Lee, like it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if you've got a college degree or you don't have a college degree, if you're working two jobs or you're unable to find a job, you are going to get squeezed.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Let me say here that while we're talking on the bad things that are happening, let us also acknowledge that not all landlords are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a few of them that's there that's not trying to hike the rent above whatever the amount should be for the state, whether that's not above 5%. So I say this to say that for those of us that are in a situation, relationship, communication with those good landlords, appreciate them, because most of our conversation will be on the other side.
Yes, I can say throughout the time I've been a member of CVH, and anytime I've had to speak at city council meetings or with our elected officials, I always said that I'm lucky that I have one of those good landlords.
Mm-hmm.
Right, me
I've
too.
rented from my landlord for over 10 years.
Mm.
And I've always said, I'm lucky, but also having somewhere to live shouldn't be about luck as well.
Yes, ma'am.
But, there are some good landlords out there. I have one of them, but that's not everybody else's some reality.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, Mystery is so spot on. And like I also have one of those and am blessed to have one of those. I think what we see in Beacon and Poughkeepsie, where I live all over, is that like more often than not, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say basically all the time,
Mm-hmm.
those landlords are like the local people
Yeah.
that own maybe one or two small buildings or one unit, two units, right? That are part of the community, have been
Yeah.
part of the community. Um, and what is what is what is both, like, I'm going to start with the bad and move to the hopeful, right? What is bad is that the way that the system is set up, it also squeezes them,
Yeah.
because the big guys, the corporate landlords, are able to like buy up so much. They're able to float debt. They're able to like hang on to properties, even if they're not turning a profit on that one because they own 100 others, right? And that squeezes out these smaller landlords that may actually just be trying to like save for retirement and provide a service to their community, like
Mm-hmm.
mine is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bad. What's hopeful is that like when you get tenants like Cherie and others, members of CVH across the Hudson Valley and across the state, and there's more beyond our membership, right? Tenants who are dealing with these issues and are wanting to see a change, and small landlords and homeowners who are dealing with their side of the issues and wanting to see a change, we can really start to be talking about some real power to move policy at the city and the state level to start to shift things so there's a fairer playing field for both small homeowners, small landlords, and the tenants that live in their buildings.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That kind of leads to a question off the top of my head that I didn't prepare. But so when you are brought any cases or it's brought to your attention certain situations, one that's relatively good, maybe just a little bit more communication to make it great, one that's really, really bad, how does your organization investigate to find the truth in either of those situations to determine if you should partake in the conversation and or connection between the tenant and the landlord? Do you do that? Do you come in and have conversations, or is it just a case study that's added to your larger fight that goes, you know, in that larger organization committee? Or is it like, okay, well, Azali came to us in her situation, while dire, we can see that if we communicate and educate both of these entities, we can turn the situation around for her, or no?
Mm,
Like, how do
mm.
you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are really great organizations out there like Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, and mediation centers that do like that one party to another party, tenant to a landlord, like communication mediation work.
Mm-hmm.
That's really not the role that our organization sees for itself or takes. What we are really focused on is that bigger picture. Now, that bigger picture could be like in the building, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say, you know, you come to me, Lady Lee, and you're like, I live in this building. There's a bunch of units. I've got, a leak in my ceiling that the landlord won't fix, and I really want it dealt with. Um, After a conversation, if I feel like, my question is going to be, who else has got leaks in their ceilings,
Yes.
or what else is happening in that building? Who have you talked to about it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there other people you think I should talk to about it? We are always looking for, are there more than one person involved in this problem that wants to take action to do something about it? Because our our role and our goal as an organization is to build community power to solve kind of some of the bigger picture items, whether that's a building and the landlord's treatment of that building, or a city or state policy, right? And so if that's not the case, you're like, no, no one else, the rest of the building's vacant, or I don't talk to anyone else, and all I want is this leak fixed.
Right.
I might say, well, you should definitely talk to legal services and make a referral like that.
Right.
And why don't you come to our next meeting and find out how to get involved to change things at the city level so that those leaks don't happen again, right? Because what we know is those one-on-one solutions, while important, they often only last so long if the broader structure isn't getting fixed as well, right?
Good answer. Miss Sounds, what do you have for us?
No, no, this is really great conversation. One of the things that I think about is the word that keeps coming up, which is community, right? And this mobilization of community to take action. Um, we know a lot of people that are part of communities that um, are not moved by the issues in community, right? And so, when we look at community, um, what kind of person do you have to, what kind of person do you have to be in the community to see people for real? What kind of things do you think about that help you really see the people you're living with and not live in this silo or isolation?
Good question. Wow.
That
Okay.
is a good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for me, as I started going to the city council meetings, and there were people there that I knew for a long time. And as they started speaking, I really was like, I didn't know that that's how they thought.
Mm,
They were more like, I should be able to raise rent of apartments that I own by
mm,
$1,000. There were comments of, if you can't afford to live here, get another job. If you can't afford to live here, get a better job. And I'm
mm,
like, I've had conversations with these people and never knew that that's how they felt.
mm. Wow.
Oh, that's
It
tough.
it is that is very tough to hear, but it also it highlights the power of storytelling and hearing someone's story to hear their perspective. And so what you kind of bring up there is a piece of, I think we need to start talking to each other. We need to start
I was
going.
thinking that.
We need to start hearing what people are actually thinking and not just taking familiarity as the quick way to deal and live with people, but hear their story as well. Anything you have, Eli, for that?
Mm. Um, I think that's absolutely right. Like, stories do matter. Uh, and we often say that, like, we have a saying that, like, the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so, like, asking for people's stories of who are experiencing these things is part of how you get to solutions, right?
Mm,
We often ignore stories because they're not like facts, right? But a story is part of how you arrive at a different solution. I would say the other thing, like, to your question of like, how do you kind of what is in a person who is looking around their community and seeing people for like what they're going through, who they are, and doing the work to bring them together. It's like, I think two of the main ingredients are curiosity, both about yourself and other people, right? Like, you got to be curious enough about yourself to be like, what am I going through that I would want different, and like how could that happen, right?
Oof.
And then curious enough about other people to be like, I wonder what they think about this. I wonder if they're what they're going through, and I wonder what we could do about it together, right? That together, that's the other piece, is like, so curiosity and like a desire to be in motion with other people, whether that's about, a community event, whether that's about like fixing your leak in your ceiling, or whether that's about passing a law that says, no one in the state should be paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, right? All of those things we believe and have seen over the course of the 30 years that CVH has been around, and much longer movements before us, right? That like those things only happen when people get together, and curiosity and a desire for shared action are two of the fundamental qualities.
Yeah, that's well said. So we're coming to the end of part 1, guys. That means we have to have them back again. Oh yeah, for part 2. But before we end this part of the podcast, what I want to ask as sort of my going out of part 1 question is your organization only focused on the rental issues, or is there a segment, a part of it that deals with home ownership and the possibility of someone entering into that phase? And the reason why I ask that is in New York, some people that are renting their homes may have the option to purchase that home, or one in the neighborhood, if not particularly that one that might be owned by the same landlord. So I just wasn't sure if your work crosses over into finding social justice for that as well, or if you stay in the rental space. Just a curiosity.
That's a great question. Shri, I wonder, maybe you want to start out talking about like what we're fighting for in 2024, those like platform priorities that you and other members decided on, and then I'm going to use that to kind of bounce back and answer your question
Perfect.
more directly. Yeah.
Other campaigns that we have focused on is Invest in Our New York, which would be taxing the wealthy their fair share that would generate billions of dollars to the state. There's other things we've discussed about Tenant to Purchase Opportunity Act, where renters can have the option to say purchase the building that they live in, have that option first before the owner goes outside and sells it to someone else. So those are the things that we've targeted that are not just geared towards rental, on ways for people to become homeowners. Because even to own a home, they're owning a home, you're paying $500,000 and up.
Yes.
And then we have the other campaigns that we also have is like good cause eviction, rent stabilization, which that is geared towards rentals. We have homes guaranteed, funding to preserve public housing. So we have various campaigns that we work on.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think
Beautiful.
what Ms. Cherie shared, especially with the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, is a really good example of how we're looking at kind of what you're lifting up of, what about folks that maybe would want to own their home, right? And while most of our members are tenants, some of them are homeowners, and we're certainly not out here saying like no one should own their home, right?
Right.
What we're about is like what are the big picture barriers to that happening right now? And here's an example, right? There's a lot of good first-time homebuyer programs out there, right? They don't have enough funding so that people can't actually get the financial assistance they need, even through that program, to actually purchase a home in today's market. If we passed the Invest in Our New York Act that we're fighting for, that Cherie mentioned, right? By simply raising taxes on the wealthiest 5%, people making over $5 million, right?
Yeah.
That's only 0.3% of New Yorkers fit into that category. Just by raising taxes by a couple percent on those 0.3% of our whole population, put $12 billion into the state budget every year that could go towards things like first-time homebuyer programs, right? So that's one example of like how we look at that problem from that big perspective. And then the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act is another. Like Cherie said, right now, if I live in a building with you all as my neighbors, our landlord could decide tomorrow that they want to sell that building to the highest bidder, and there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, we can organize a tenant union and try and do something about it. That's where I would come in. But if we pass the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, our landlord would have to come to us first and say, hey, I want to sell this building. I'm looking to retire, whatever. I'm giving you guys the option to purchase it first before giving it to another. They would be required by law. And there would be funding and resources built in so that, it's not like every tenant has $100,000 sitting in the bank for a down payment, right? To support with that. So for us, it's really looking at the big picture, like barriers and solutions. So what's going to transform the system so that that kind of thing is possible for more people?
Yeah, I like that. Listen, risers, we are not going to do rise and fall on part 1. You have to come back to part 2 to get the spa voice from Miss Sounds and to light your fireplaces. Yes, we just can't. So I know you want to light the fireplace and put your foot up on the ottoman. So you're going to have to come to part 2 so that Miss Sounds can give you the spa voice, because we have to end this part of the conversation here. But Cherie and Eli, they're going to be back, because I told y'all we were coming with good people that know what they're talking about. And this conversation just started, Miss Sounds. It just got interesting.
Ooh, so good, so good. So good. I'm excited for part 2.
Y'all better come
Same
back.
here.
I'm gonna be looking for y'all. Okay, don't let us have these people coming out here. Y'all ain't showing up. Listen, we will see you
making
guys
us look
on
crazy.
part 2. Don't make us look crazy. We don't do crazy. We do excited. It's different. Listen, risers, you guys have a brilliant day, and keep doing the homework. Keep working on you. You're gonna rise up because you're choosing to do so. And we'll be back. So you guys have a brilliant, brilliant day. See y'all soon.
All right. Bye, y'all.